Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Take 10. We come to you every week with a look at a mental health-related issue or challenge for caregivers and their care recipients. I'm Arron. Carol Zernial, our regular co-host on special assignment today, and we're delighted to have Tina Smith filling in. Tina is the Senior Director of Caregiver Program Operations for the Caregiver SOS program at WellMed Charitable Foundation, and she is well-versed in issues involving caring and caregiving. Dr. Jamie Huysman is a nationally known psychotherapist, an expert on caregiving as well as addictions, and both of you, we're delighted to have you with us on Take 10 today. Tina Smith came up with a great idea, Dr. Jamie. How can caregivers find joy during the upcoming holiday preparations when they are often overcome with stress and challenges that they just don't know how to deal with?
So this is the holiday time. Glad that you're doing this show because you're reminding me, because I think I feel like a caregiver, which means like an automaton right now, doing two different things at the same time and trying to make everybody happy. So thank you, Tina, and thank you, Ron, for the intervention that it's holiday time. That should also help you to know that I'm the patient as well. But I will tell you this. The answer to that question is the same reason why we wrote that book in 2006, Take Your Oxygen First. When we talk to caregivers, and Tina knows this quite well because she serves caregivers so ably throughout Texas and Florida, we literally have to get them to say, if you take care of yourself, your loved one will feel more stable, more secure while they have a chronic, acute, or terminal illness, God forbid. What does that mean? That means our gift to find joy during the holidays is to give ourselves the gift of self-care, of being able to pertain to ourselves, a mind, body, spirit fashion, how to bring joy into our hearts from both a physical, a spiritual, and psychological way. So it literally is putting yourself first on the gift list.
So if you're caring, for example, a mom who every year hosted the Christmas celebration, the New Year's celebration, and frankly isn't quite up to it now, what do you say to her and what do you say to family?
Well, that's a cool thing too. I call them hacks in holiday, because holidays are a whole different time, and we're used to traditions. We're used to mom doing things. God love her. We're used to the family sort of being like this or this or this, and nothing out of place. Well, it's time to get a new shift in your thought process. These hacks say that, listen, maybe we do things differently because mom is not the coordinated facilitator. How do we keep the spirit alive and kind of change the traditions or change? And I would more or less say it's through self-care, time allocations. Let's say Christmas cards even. You don't really have to send them out in Christmas time. I mean, you can send one card out New Year's that takes all the holidays. You can also go to mom, dad, and all your family members and talk about, this is the case. This is like life. Mom cannot handle it. We want to keep in our spirit, but the spirit needs to be handled in a different way. Let's look at creating new traditions. Let's create new things that include mom, but allow us to also kind of alleviate the pressure on ourselves.
What would be an example?
Well, first and foremost, the proper thing I always think is time allocations. Really to be, there for ourselves and yet also there to serve the holiday needs and be, let's say, the alternative to what mom did. We really need to look at time from a different perspective. We've always been responsible for the time as caregivers. We've always taken care of our loved one, thinking everything relied on us. Time now can be divided, allocated to different members of the family. Time, events, activities, directions, like a quarterback, okay? We're not all the time now. It's holiday time, right? We're bringing the family in here, even old Uncle Ernie that we don't want to see, whoever it is. The whole group is coming, the whole mishbucha, as you and I would say. So let's just look at how we can actually lessen the load, our own time allocations and taking care of mom or dad, and how can we actually bring people in almost a Sunday quarterback sort of situation? I mean, because we are the quarterback, but we're tired and we need a rest.
Would you recommend, since family may be coming in, let's say, would you recommend having that conversation before everyone gets there, or maybe after, in the midst of everything, have a family powwow, so to speak?
I just love that question because I always think that we should have all questions answered yesterday. Even when I go into court, I really only want to be asked questions that I know the answers to and beforehand. And caregiving is no different. I think that we literally can plan ahead in just the same way. If today somebody's listening to our broadcast says holidays are coming, kind of like me, it's the intervention. Maybe it is time to map out, Tina, that plan of who do we call? Who do we involve? How do we all get our vision included here to see what, Thanksgiving we may be a bit late for, but for how's Christmas or Hanukkah look? How does the New Year's look? And do that collectively, because you're right, Tina, it's an entire bonding process. And maybe the family, especially long distance caregivers, have not been involved as much as they really need to be or should be.
I'll come back to both of you in a moment, but I want to let folks know who may have just joined us. You're listening to Take 10. I'm Ron Arron, along with Dr. Jamie Huysman and Tina Smith. We're talking about preparing for the holidays for the caregiver who may feel overwhelmed and is looking for joy in those holidays, whether it be Christmas or Hanukkah or New Year's. And it's year-round celebrations, really, Dr. Jamie, where you perhaps have to get a new script.
You really do, Ron. Caregiving gives us the opportunity, almost the excuse, right, to the world and to ourselves to say, this ain't Kansas anymore. Life has shifted. We have a whole new factor. The metrics have changed in our lifetime. And to do this effectively, we cannot do it the way we once did life, okay? To really integrate mom, dad, the care, and also, believe it or not, juggling the family who all thinks they probably have a different idea of what to do, really tells us that, everything, how do we change it? How do we integrate the solution here? And just what Tina says, number one, I would get in front of it. I would get the family members and bring them, involve them. Don't tell them what to do. Scratch your head like Columbo and say, look, I believe we got an issue here. I'd love to be able to hear everybody's ideas here. Let's sift through them. And then how can we execute these ideas so that all of us can have joy and all of us can have mom or dad there and all of us can come out of this with a positive outcome.
Now, for those under the age of 50, Columbo was a very successful TV series starring Peter Falk in his technique, and questioning witnesses and suspects was always a head scratch and posing a question that, of course, he knew the answer to, but hoping he'd elicit it from the person he was talking to. So,
are you telling me that Peter Falk's not on TikTok?
Probably is.
No, I think the ghost of him may be, but yeah, you're right. I didn't know we were drawing the TikTok audience, but maybe, since this is such a popular show, I haven't looked at the numbers, so I'm sure we probably are.
So, Dr. Jamie, for the caregiver who's listening, who's kind of afraid to broach it to mom, who she's caring for, that, you're not up to who you used to be, isn't it possible mom already knows that?
I do believe that, but the big but here, you can't assume, right? Like Miguel Ruiz, everybody should grab the 4 agreements if they're in the middle of caregiving. It'll help you, but don't assume anything here. I do think that probably the consciousness that mom understands that, but I would also think that, as I say to everybody on the interventions, the messenger always gets killed if you're going to be the only one. And so it doesn't work, interventions one-on-one. So again, to Tina's point, I would collectively, before I even shared that awareness or shared any awareness in the holiday time that things are changing, because change is difficult, especially if you're entrenched in your illness, if you will. And I would get everybody on the same page as let's all approach mom. Let's all approach dad with this kind of newfound fun and joy, and let's involve them, but not one-on-one.
Tina, you get the last word. Does that help?
I think it does. And I like I guess the way Jamie said, it's a new normal, it's a whole different, it's a new world. And I think approaching it as such will make those conversations a little bit easier. And also being aware and being open to hearing what they're actually going to say, even though you want to know the answer or you think you know the answer, being open to some different ideas would be helpful as well.
Well, that puts a wrap on it. And in the next couple of days, we'll check Google and see if searches for Columbo have soared through the roof. Thank you, Dr. Jamie Huysman. Thank you, Tina Smith. I'm Ron Arron. We'll talk with you soon right here on Take 10.